guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video we're talking about oxygen absorbers and things you should definitely not be stored using those. First of all, let's talk about what's actually oxygen absorbers. Well, they're the tiny little sachets that you normally buy in a multi-packs of approximately 50 to 100. They all come in different sizes for obviously different size Milo bags. So what's inside the one of those? Well, actually it contains only a few very simple ingredients, including the iron powder, some salt and carbon. This is literally as simple as that. And the whole process is basically a chemical reaction. So as soon as one of those is taken out of the protective environment, it is exposed to oxygen, and with the help of salt and carbon, it basically begins to rust. And the formation of the rust removes the oxygen from your packet. So literally this is as simple as that. So why is it so important, guys, to be able to know which products you should be using those for and which are not? Well, unfortunately, or fortunately, if you're aware of, there's certain foods, guys, and not just the wet foods, actually come under the threat of the botulism bacteria. And it's not just happened in the normal tinned or canned fruits and vegetables. It could also happen to your semi-dried ingredients. This is why it's really, really important to know the reasons and the products that you should not be adding the oxygen absorbers to. So, without further ado, guys, let's cover those few products. Let's start with number one, which is brown rice. Brown rice has a lot of natural oils, and when those oils are exposed to the lack of oxygen, that could become really, really rancid and not safe to consume. This is one of the reasons, guys, why we're not using or should not be using an oxygen absorber while storing the brown rice. Secondly, oxygen absorbers, believe this or not, are able to actually absorb a little bit of moisture as well. So because the brown rice has a little bit of moisture too, by adding the oxygen absorbers in there, you could literally make this rice really, really dry and then very difficult to cook, especially if you keep it long term. So number two, guys, we follow on to a brown sugar. I have here just a demerara sugar, but any sugar that is not a white sugar will also have the addition of molasses. Those kind of sugars have on average 5% moisture content. And again, this is kind of a reason why, guys, we do not want to use your oxygen absorbers. First of all, guys, the sugar can become hard, which is not basically a big deal. However, again, because of the moisture content, guys, and removing the oxygen, we could also make the sugar go rancid over the long time and be unsafe to consume. So one of the things definitely know it's a sugar. So stay away from oxygen absorbers. One thing, guys, if you're worried, okay, you can just store your sugar in a normal airtight container. It could possibly go hard. It's no problem whatsoever. All you got to do, just add on a moist cracker or piece of bread and it'll be as good as new in a couple of days' time. So next things, guys, we're moving on and we are talking about our fruits and vegetables, but we're not talking about the dehydrated fruits and vegetables that are actually crispy and snappy when you're trying to snap them in half, but we are talking about things like sun-dried tomatoes. It's absolutely number one, okay, and all the other fruits, guys, like we've got sultanas, cranberries, raisins, apricots, dates, anything that is soft and pliable, it's absolutely no-go. Things like sun-dried tomatoes especially, guys, and a lot of those berries do contain approximately 10% of moisture, and this is absolutely no-go and absolutely no way you should be using the oxygen absorber. Again, we're coming down to the botulism again. Botulism thrives in an environment that has a little bit of moisture, but it's lacking oxygen. And by basically taking away oxygen, by having a moisture in our product, it literally is a breeding ground. And this is why it's super, super unsafe. And under no circumstances store any of your fruits and vegetables that are moist with oxygen absorber. As with the rice as well, guys, anything, just put them in a clip top jar like a sugar. It's so long as the airtight, that's fine. But so long as the oxygen is present, you are safe. As soon as you're taking the oxygen out, guys, you put yourself under severe risk of botulism, and it's not something you want to do because you won't smell it, you won't even know it's there. So here we are, guys. Do not ever store any of your moist fruit and vegetables with the oxygen absorber. Next thing on the list, guys, is a super fine powders. Okay, we're talking about anything, guys. Like I've got some spices, we've got some tomato powder, we have ginger. This is just an example of anything that is a super fine powder. Again, absolutely no reason for you to store any of these things with oxygen absorber. Firstly, okay, the adverse effect, guys, as I mentioned earlier, oxygen absorber can absorb a little bit of moisture. So first of all, your spices or your powders can become really brick hard. Again, doesn't make them unusable, but it's not something you really need in your pantry. Neither do you really need to waste oxygen absorber on that. And secondly as well, oxygen absorbers are able to kind of suck in the compounds from the smells, and that in turn will actually make your kind of powders less palatable or less stronger than they are. So totally, absolutely no reason to be using oxygen absorbers. As you can see, I'm just storing my little powders in the glass jars. They're not even like vacuum sealed, guys, or anything. They're just literally just in the jar with a screw top lid. And I've got the long-term, not say long-term, but my bulk herbs that I buy, guys. To be fair, if I don't have the jars, they're just gonna sit in my pantry like this, and they do. If you wanted to have a look at my video on my spices cupboards, I go through literally 2 of my cupboards that are full of spices, and a lot of things are just kept in the bags like that, and there's absolutely no issue with this whatsoever. So I'll put the link there for any of you who's interested to have a look at that video. But yeah, so guys, yeah, spices, anything, fine powders, no need for that whatsoever. So next thing, guys, is coffee, and we are talking about, guys, coffee beans, not freeze-dried coffee. Okay, we stock a lot of the coffee beans because we go through a lot of this. We've got a bean to cup coffee machine, so this is what we store, this is what we choose to store. And I know there's many people sort of wondering whether the coffee beans not able to sort of last a very long time. Well, they absolutely can, and you certainly do not need to use oxygen absorbers. They are best to be stored in the Milo bags, absolutely, but you do not need to use oxygen absorber. If you're comparing, guys, to the ground coffee, the fresh ground coffee beans, grounded coffee beans would not last you as long as the fresh whole bean. At the same time, obviously the freeze-dried coffee will last you absolute eternity, so this is a different matter. But we are talking about the normal coffee beans. Coffee beans actually have some volatile profiles, so by putting the oxygen absorber in, oxygen absorber will potentially jeopardize those volatile compounds, thus taking away again the flavor and the aromas of coffee, makes it probably a little bit unpalatable over the long period of time. Secondly, believe it or not, after the coffee has been roasted, okay, it actually creates carbon dioxide for quite a while thereafter. So if you ever wondered why those coffee bags have the little holes in there, they're actually one-way valves to get the carbon dioxide out. So if you ever wondered, because I did for a little while before, and I'm like, why on earth? And you think, oh, yes, you can smell the coffee through that. Maybe that's the reason. But no, this is the reason, guys, to make sure the carbon dioxide comes out, because if it doesn't, guys, the bag will basically bulge out. So if to this condition, guys, you actually add on your oxygen absorber, takes the oxygen out, then it potentially creates the scenario where your bag can actually burst. So technically, for 2 reasons, guys: A, it takes away the flavor, and B, it makes it potentially unsafe for long-term storage, in terms of unsafe, that if your bag actually bursts, that is just waste of time. So there we are. So absolutely no need for that. I'll just keep them in original manufacturer packages, to be fair. We had coffee that we had, again, a couple of years past date. It was no issues at all. I don't feel the need even to waste the Milo bags, considering a lot of the commercial, especially if you buy coffees in the big packages, come in the Milo bags anyway. So that's that. And the last, guys, but not least, we're talking, and I don't have one for you to show, but we're talking about like a jerky, whether it's a beef jerky or any other jerky or fish jerky. Anything that's a dehydrated meat, guys, it's got similar issues to a coffee. They have volatile compounds there, so by introducing the oxygen absorbers into that, you're potentially taking away the flavors and the aromas. Secondly, again, using oxygen absorbers, like I said, like with the sugar and the rice, it potentially could take away that moisture. But the whole idea of the jerky, guys, it's a little bit chewy. That's the whole point of the jerky. That gives it this jerkiness, if you wish. So by putting the oxygen absorber in, you potentially can make a jerky a little bit unpleasant, a little bit dry, and less flavorful. If you ever wondered, if you ever bought the jerky packets, which are now stupidly expensive, they actually come with a little desiccant packets. Don't confuse them, they're not oxygen absorbers. They're literally ones to take just excess moisture. So when they just package that, the beef jerky probably a tiny bit more softer than it is when you actually come to consume it in a packet. So they just add this on there to avoid potentially sweating, avoid slight changes in the temperature whilst it's sitting there in either transport or in your pantry. It is there just to protect the jerky texture for a longer time, but it is not an oxygen absorber, and you should not be using one there too. But there we are, guys. It kind of sums up the most important points, or the most important foods that you should not be using oxygen absorbers. There are other things there, guys, I'm sure you will know when you put suggestions forward, things like salt. You totally don't need that. Salt doesn't go rancid, nothing happens to that. It potentially might clump up a little bit, but again, it's no need for that to use, there's no need for you to use oxygen absorber. And there'll be a few other things as well that people might think that having the oxygen absorber will prolong the life of your product, but in more instances it will do it more harm than good. So anyway, hopefully guys you found this helpful. If you have any questions, obviously please comment below. Don't forget to thumbs up the video, subscribe if you haven't already, and I shall see you in the next one. Bye bye.